The lesson this morning, the first lesson, is taken from Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. And if you'd like to follow along, you may do so in the Pew Bible in front of you. Turn to the Old Testament, page 66. Listen for the word of the Lord. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. Your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the seventh day and consecrated it. The second lesson is taken from Matthew, chapter 11, verses 28 through 30, and it may be followed. You may follow along in the New Testament at page 12. Listen for the word of the Lord. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Today we begin our summer worship series, Real Faith, R-E-E-L, faith. So each Sunday's worship service is going to hinge around and be based upon the themes from a movie. And we will show those movies on the Wednesday previous to the Sunday. So this last Wednesday night, we watched a whole series of films, actually 5 short films that were put together into one feature-length film. Next Sunday, Kate will be preaching, and it will focus around the movie What About Bob, which is a hilarious comedy. So come on Wednesday night at 7 for What About Bob. Do I have to take care of everything around here? And with that, the wife and mother of this week's short film sums up her frustration. Not so much with her family, but with her own life. Do I have to take care of everything? Well, no, actually, you don't. That job's already taken. That's what God does. God takes care of everything. This Oscar-nominated short Finnish film is about Sabbath. It's about the art of doing nothing. This film is about why you and I need Sabbath and how much we resist it. It's the art of doing nothing. When was the last time that you just hung out? With your family or with your friends or even just with yourself? When was the last time that you just did nothing? Did everyone have a chance to see the film? Raise your hands if you saw that we're able to see the film. Okay, so most of you did, some didn't. To summarize the film, and it might take me longer to describe the film than it was to watch it. To summarize the film, a woman wakes up, realizes she and her family are late getting up because they have a wedding to attend. She has prepared everything. She bought a gift and wrapped it. She washed her daughter's dresses, etc. She wakes up, panic seizes her. They're going to be late. She wakes up her husband and her children and gets them going. She discovers then that her daughter's dresses are still in the washing machine, soaking wet. And so she enlists their help a bit and suggests that they pick out a dress, something to wear to a party. Pandemonium continues to swirl around her while her husband quietly sips coffee and grabs a peek at the day's headlines. The house itself is chaotic, with things stuffed every which way in every nook and cranny. In fact, it's hard to see the furniture because there's so much stuff lying around. The house reflects the tenor of the morning. She can't find the gift. The taxi is not answering the phone. She starts to make a card to substitute for the missing gift, and then the daughters appear, dressed and ready to go, in Halloween costumes. The church bells ring, and the family is out the door, with a houseplant and a homemade card to suffice for the wedding couple. They run, but they miss the tram. So they continue running all the way to the church, with Mom carrying the plant and the card, insisting that she needs no help. Well, on the way, the heel of Mom's shoe gives way and she falls to the pavement. The plant crashes to the ground. The pot around the plant breaks, but because the plant is pot-bound and root-bound, it doesn't fall apart. Mom gets up, brushes aside her skinned knee and her broken shoe, picks up the plant, sans pot, and forges on, encouraging her family to keep up. And they run into the church, a bit disheveled, quite a bit out of breath, but present, only to find that the service going on is not a wedding, but a funeral. It's okay to laugh. It was funny. She has gotten the wrong date. After appropriate gestures at the funeral, which themselves are hilarious, the family regroups outside the church. "What will we do now, Mommy?" And the father and husband replies, "We will do nothing." When was the last time you did nothing? If you're like me, it's hard to remember. That Protestant work ethic is so deeply ingrained that it's difficult for some of us to have moments of non-productivity. It feels irresponsible somehow. For others, we simply have to have every moment programmed. I think I've told you the story of a Buddhist monk visiting New York City. Have I told you this story? If so, I'm telling it again. So the monk visits New York City, he takes the train, and his host meets him at the train station, and they start to make their way across town. The host indicated that if they took a route through Central Park, they could save about 10 minutes. And when they emerged from the subway and started to walk through the park, the monk sits down on a bench. What are you doing? Are you tired? Do you need to rest? Oh, no, I'm just enjoying those 10 minutes. This need to be productive, to program every minute, to keep things under our control has gone into overdrive of late, it seems. We can't be stopped for just a few seconds before we whip out our phones to check a text, a tweet, an email, a posting of some sort, or even just to check the time. But this drive toward productivity is not something new. It's not rooted in the advancing technology and gadgets which garner our attention. This drive toward productivity is actually rooted in the garden. The first garden, Eden. Since sin entered the world, you and I have been trying to manipulate and control creation. Remember that God said, "Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread." And we have been working hard to make creation do what we want it to do ever since. We toil and toil and toil. We work with what we have, and we work and we work and we work, but the work never seems to be finished. and we do our absolute best to control creation. But before the toil was just the garden and everything in the garden. Sun and moon, plants for beauty and for food, animals, everything that is needed for life, provided by our Lord God. And written into the very fabric of creation is the gift of Sabbath, the practice of a weekly cessation from work. The Lord rested on the seventh day, presumably not in exhaustion, but in peace, because creation was finished. The Lord delighted in the goodness of creation. Remember that at the end of the sixth day, the scriptures say that God saw everything that God had made, and indeed, it was very good. Delighting in the goodness of creation. So too, for you and me. Sabbath as a day of rest, a day of completion, is the announcement of faith. It announces our trust in this God who is confident enough to rest. For ancient Israel and for you and for me, observing the Sabbath is an assertion of faith, that life does not depend upon our feverish activity of self-securing, but that there can be a pause in which life is given to us simply as a gift. A pause for us not to create, not to organize, not to control, but simply to receive. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." The Lord says, "My yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Jesus invites the burdened, the exhausted, the spent to come and to find rest. But the rest that Jesus promises is less a life of passive acceptance or private ease than it is new direction, a new way to live into God's design for human life. What Jesus offers is not a hammock, but a yoke. In Judaism, the yoke was the symbol of obedience, and the obedience to the law and the wisdom of God. So taking on Jesus' yoke actually yokes us to God. Jesus' yoke is easy and his burden is light, not because the way is easy, not because there's very little to do. The yoke of Jesus is easy and his burden's light because it is the way of God. So Jesus, inviting us to put on this yoke, invites you and me to live life as it was created to be lived. Think back to that garden. Delighting in all of creation. Remember that a yoke was designed to be put around the necks of oxen so that their energy and their strength could be most efficiently harnessed. Speaking of manipulating creation. The yoke not only captured the power of the animal, but it did so in the most productive way possible. An easy yoke was one that was particularly fitted to the one for whom it had been fashioned. Custom made. Tailor made. Not only to keep from chafing, but also to make maximum use of the effort expended. So what Jesus is saying is that the life of faith doesn't chafe when we are yoked to Him, only when we try to live it on our own. His yoke is both easy and light. It provides both support and direction, with the weaker, that would be you and me, gaining strength of the stronger, that would be Jesus. The less easily managed, that would be you and me, being brought under control by the more mature, that would be Jesus. Jesus says that so yoked, you and I will receive strength and direction as we learn from Him. But the word that Jesus uses for learn is not so much about being a pupil or a student as it is being an apprentice. That is to say, Jesus does not say, listen to my teaching and conform. Rather, Jesus says, follow me. But even with that, keep this yoke in mind. Jesus doesn't say, follow behind me, walk where I walk. Rather, Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Walk beside me. Learn that I am gentle and humble by walking so yoked with me. And then, and only then, can you and I know the meaning of rest for our souls. Then and only then can you and I know the mystery of this relationship that wells up within, constantly calling forth the best from us, while embracing us with love and courage to try again when we offer less than our best. Sabbath rest is about trusting the one to whom you and I are yoked. Forfeiting our frenetic need to control the world around us. It's remembering, folks, that God really is taking care of everything. And as you and I practice Sabbath, doing nothing except living in God's good world, living as a human being, remember, not a human doing, then we will live deeper and deeper into the mystery of this meal. Because this meal is about grace. It's about remembering that you and I are unable to save ourselves. That we are unable to bring ourselves into the fullness of life as God created it to be lived. God is the only one who can do that, and it has been done in Jesus Christ. It comes, this gift of salvation comes as pure gift. And as you and I practice Sabbath rest, relinquishing this idea that we are in control of our universes, placing our lives into that yoke with Jesus, we will come more and more to being the people God created us to be. This table calls us to nothing less. And this meal transforms us into nothing less. So come, taste and see, the Lord is good.